Radical Focus, Achieving Your Most Important Goals with Objectives and Key Results by Christina Wodtke. Hannah sat at her desk, hands pressed flat against the wood, fighting the overwhelming urge to just collapse forward onto her keyboard. Her startup, a dream born from a shared love of good tea, was dying. Not spectacularly, but slowly, quietly, like a candle burning down in an empty room. Her co-founder seemed to be living on a different planet. Her lead engineer was basically running a one-man chaos factory, and she was about to fire someone for the very first time in her life. How does this happen? How does a brilliant idea, backed by smart money and fueled by genuine passion, end up circling the drain? This scene plays out every single day, in garages, in coffee shops, in sleek boardrooms with expensive furniture. It's the moment when inspiration slams headfirst into the brick wall of reality. And it's the beating heart of a deceptively small book that's become a quiet revolution in how people achieve extraordinary things. Radical Focus, by Christina Wodtke. Here's what makes this book different. It's not another dry business manual stuffed with charts that put you to sleep. It's a story. A real, human story about a tiny tea company that almost failed. But threaded through that story is an elegant, powerful system for actually achieving what matters most. It's called OKRs, Objectives and Key Results, a framework that was born at Intel, turbocharged at Google, and has helped countless organizations explode with growth. Today, we're walking through this story together. And here's my promise. By the time we're done, you'll understand the one critical difference between people who dream and people who do. You'll have a blueprint, simple but profound, for taking your most important goals, whether for a company, a project, or your own life, and actually making them happen. This isn't about cramming more tasks into your day. It's about doing the right things. It's about finding crystal clarity when everything feels like chaos. It's about mastering the art of radical focus. Our story starts where so many great adventures begin, with two people who are really annoyed about something. Meet Hannah and Jack, two students at Stanford. Hannah came from a family steeped in Chinese tea tradition, and she couldn't find a decent cup of Longjing tea in Palo Alto to save her life. Jack, a British designer with refined tastes, was baffled that he could track down a perfectly poached egg, but only tea that came in depressing paper bags. One day, their mutual tea despair brought them together. A friendship sparked, and then an idea caught fire. They saw a gap in the market. Tiny artisanal tea growers had amazing product, but no way to reach high-end restaurants and cafes. These places obsessed over their coffee but were completely clueless about tea. Hannah and Jack would become the bridge. They called their startup TB, with a mission that felt perfect, bringing great tea to people who love it. With some seed funding from the right connections, they launched. Hannah took the CEO role, the business brain. Jack became president, the soul of the product. They found a small office, hired a few engineers, and Jack, with his designer's eye, built a gorgeous website where restaurants could order exceptional tea. For a while, everything felt magical. The dream was breathing and alive. They gave away samples at tech meetups. Hannah closed deals with local restaurants, and the office buzzed with the quiet confidence of a company on the rise. But then something started to shift. A subtle wrongness crept in. The money clock was ticking. They had maybe a year of runway left. And while plenty of small tea producers were signing up for their platform, hardly any restaurants were actually buying. Their marketplace was lopsided, and a lopsided market isn't really a market. It's an expensive hobby. So they did what founders do. They hit the streets to sell the tea themselves. One day, Hannah returned to the office with a massive order, but it wasn't from some trendy cafe. It was from a restaurant supplier, a big, boring company that sold everything from canned goods to coffee to restaurants large and small. Jack felt conflicted. Sure, it was a lot of money, but it wasn't the plan. Their vision was about fine dining and exquisite tea. Did some generic supplier really care about quality? Jack, Hannah said, exhaustion in her voice, the restaurants don't trust us yet. We're too new. But the suppliers are willing to take a chance. and they'll get our tea into those exact same restaurants. Let's just see how this plays out. A few days later, Hannah closed another supplier deal, then another. Each sale was like closing 20 restaurants at once. The tea growers were thrilled. They were selling more tea than they'd ever dreamed. The numbers were finally looking good. Hannah realized this was their actual business. It was time to pivot. A pivot, she explained to Jack, isn't about abandoning your mission. Their mission was still bringing great tea to people who love it. A pivot is about changing your tactics to achieve that mission. They'd sell to suppliers, who'd then sell to restaurants. More efficient, more profitable, same destination. Jack resisted. He was the keeper of the vision, the product purist. He worried the suppliers would squeeze prices, forcing growers to sacrifice quality. He was designing beautiful new packaging, agonizing over the exact shade of blue for the boxes. And something else bothered him. One of the new suppliers had complained the website was too complicated. Hannah had agreed to enter their orders manually. Rubbish! I did usability testing on that design, Jack protested. This is the classic tension point in any venture, the idealist versus the pragmatist. The vision of the perfect product versus the messy reality of what the market actually wants. Jack worried about problems they might face someday. Hannah focused on the problem they had right now. Time and money were running out. As she told him, quoting her mother, "Solve the problems you have, not the ones you imagine." They were stuck. So they did what smart founders do. They sought wisdom. They went to see Jim Frost, their first investor, a Silicon Valley veteran who'd watched hundreds of companies rise and fall. They met him at a Starbucks, a place Jack despised as the temple of mass-produced mediocrity. Jim listened patiently to their dilemma. Then he told them a story about Intel in the 1980s. The company was hemorrhaging money in the memory chip business, getting crushed by Japanese competitors. The founders, Andy Grove and Gordon Moore, were tormented about what to do. One day, Andy turned to Gordon and asked a powerful question. "If we got kicked out and the board brought in a new CEO, what do you think he would do?" Gordon didn't hesitate. "He would get us out of memories." Andy's response was like a lightning bolt. "Why shouldn't you and I walk out the door, come back in, and do it ourselves?" And that's exactly what they did. They abandoned the memory business and bet everything on microprocessors, a decision that launched Intel into the stratosphere. Jim called this the, quote, revolving door test. It's about stepping outside your own history, your own emotions, and looking at the problem with completely fresh eyes. "So kids," Jim asked them, "if you were hired as the new CEO today, what would you do?" The question hung in the air like smoke. The answer was painfully obvious. The suppliers were where the money lived. This was where they'd found that magical thing every startup desperately hunts for: product market fit. Jack finally, reluctantly, had to agree. "I suppose if I was the new CEO, I'd have to commit to the pivot." Breakthrough moment. But Jim knew this was just the opening act. Getting aligned is one thing. Staying aligned is a completely different beast. "I recommend you consider using OKRs to keep things on track," he said. He explained the basics. OKRs stand for Objectives and Key Results. Each quarter, you set one bold, inspiring, qualitative objective. Then you set 3 measurable, quantitative key results that prove whether you've actually achieved it. The objective is the what. It's the dream. It should make you want to leap out of bed in the morning. The key results are the how. They're the proof. They should scare you a little. They should be ambitious goals where you only have about a 50-50 shot of actually hitting them. This is crucial. OKRs are not a to-do list. They're not about launching a feature. They're about achieving an outcome. The objective fires up the creative, right-brained people. The key results ground everything in reality for the analytical, left-brain folks. It's a system that marries passion with proof. So Hannah and Jack sat there at that Starbucks patio and hammered out their first OKR. Their objective: establish clear value to restaurant suppliers as a quality tea provider. It was inspiring. It was focused. Their key results: 1. Reorders at 70%. 2. 50% of reorders happen through self-service on the website. 3. Revenue of $250,000. These were measurable, ambitious, a little scary. They finally had a clear, shared definition of success for the next 3 months. Filled with renewed energy, they returned to the office and announced the pivot and their new OKRs to the team, but immediately they hit a wall. Their lead programmer, Eric, was furious. "This is nonsense," he said. "This company was started to help farmers and small businesses. That's why I joined." The team fractured. Some people were excited about the new direction. Others felt like they were selling out. Then, at the end of the meeting, someone asked a dangerous question. "What about our current customers? The restaurants?" Jack, desperate to keep everyone happy, quickly replied, "Oh, we can keep them." And Hannah, not wanting more conflict, let it slide. She'd deal with it later. It was a small compromise, but it planted a seed that would nearly destroy them. Because focus isn't just about choosing what to do, it's about ruthlessly choosing what not to do. In the weeks that followed, the company lost its way. Jack, the product purist, couldn't let go of his original vision. He kept organizing tea tastings at co-working spaces, trying to sell to individual businesses. It was networking, he argued, but it had absolutely nothing to do with their one critical objective. It wasn't helping them establish value with restaurant suppliers. It was a beautiful, time-consuming distraction. Meanwhile, Hannah was drowning. Because Jack wasn't fixing the website to handle bulk orders from suppliers, she spent hours every single day manually entering orders herself. The very thing making them money was burning out their CEO. One night after another pointless tasting event, she confronted him. "We agreed on our OKRs. These events don't move any of them forward. This is a waste of time." But Jack wasn't listening. He was talking to Eric, the disgruntled engineer, who was feeding his fears that Hannah was just a, quote, typical MBA who only cared about money. Eric was reinforcing Jack's resistance, telling him, "Good thing we're watching out for the tea growers. Somebody's got to." The culture was turning toxic. The team was splitting into warring camps. The dream was dissolving into resentment and finger-pointing. The breaking point arrived in 2 crushing blows. First, Hannah had a brutal meeting with the numbers. They were 6 weeks into the quarter, and not one of their key results was moving. Revenue was flat. Reorders weren't happening automatically. They were failing. She confronted Jack, who admitted he wasn't really a, quote, numbers kind of guy. "Jack," she exploded, "your refusal to pay attention to basic economics is driving me insane. This is your company." She told him about her grandparents' restaurant, how they tried to keep everyone on payroll during a downturn, and ended up losing everything. "I can't make that mistake," she said, her voice shaking. The second blow was even worse. A major supplier, Jefferson, called to cancel their contract. Why? Too many wrong orders. The manual entry system had failed catastrophically. And because Jefferson was their biggest buyer of matcha tea, Jack had to make a heartbreaking call to their partner, Tenzo Farms, and tell them their biggest customer was gone. He had to tell them not to hire the new person they were planning to bring on. The failure was no longer just numbers on a screen. It had a human face. It was the sound of disappointment in a farmer's voice on the other end of a phone line. For the first time, Jack understood that the business wasn't just about beautiful packaging and a perfect website. It was an ecosystem. His failure to do his job, to write the technical spec for the bulk order feature, had hurt real people. Hannah, feeling completely alone, went back to see Jim, their investor. But he didn't offer comfort. He offered ice-cold reality. "I'm your investor, not your mom," he said. "You get it together with Jack, or you remove him. You focus on fixing your numbers, or I look for someone who can actually take this company to the next level." The threat was crystal clear. Fix this, or you're both gone. That night, the final piece fell into place, and it was terrifying. Jack confessed to Hannah what he'd overheard. Eric wasn't just complaining. He was actively sabotaging the company. He'd been intentionally writing confusing, tangled code that no one else could understand, making himself indispensable. He was building a fortress around his job, even if it meant burning down the whole castle. Hannah hit rock bottom. The company was in a death spiral. She'd failed to lead. Jack had failed to execute. Their team was in chaos, and now they had a saboteur in their midst. Then, just when everything seemed utterly lost, Jim called. "Can you kids swing by the Starbucks? I'm talking to someone here, and I think you need to meet him." They walked onto that Starbucks patio feeling defeated and angry, expecting another lecture. Instead, they saw Jim sitting with a man who looked like he owned the world. Dark hair, aviator sunglasses, a relaxed confidence that radiated energy. His name was Raphael. He was a brilliant engineer who'd just left a gaming company after a successful exit. He was their potential new chief technology officer. Hannah, committed to brutal honesty, laid everything out. "We set several critical goals last quarter, and we hit exactly 0 of them," she confessed, expecting him to politely excuse himself and walk away. Raphael just grinned. "You're doing it wrong," he said. And in that moment, everything shifted. Raphael wasn't just an engineer, he was an execution machine. He understood the OKR system not as some vague management theory, but as a practical, powerful tool for getting things done. He grabbed a napkin and started sketching. 5 OKRs, he said? You can't even remember them all. How can your team? If you say 3 things, you say nothing. It's the economy, stupid. Focus on one key message, one objective for the whole company. That's it. This was the first lesson of radical focus. The power of one. A company needs a single, unifying goal that everyone can remember and rally behind, not a laundry list of competing priorities that nobody can keep straight. But you can't just set goals and hope magic happens, he continued. You have to execute against them as a team. That means check-ins, a weekly rhythm. He drew 4 squares on the napkin. This, he explained, was their weekly dashboard, their new ritual. In the top right, you put your one company, OKR, for the quarter. Next to each key result, you put your confidence level on a scale of 1 to 10. You start at 5 out of 10, a 50-50 shot. Every week you ask, has our confidence gone up or down? It forces an honest conversation about what's working and what isn't. In the bottom right, you list your health metrics. These are the things you need to protect while you're swinging for the fences. Things like customer satisfaction or team morale. You mark them green, yellow, or red. If something turns red, it's a code red. You can pause work on the OKRs to fix what's broken. It creates balance. It stops you from winning the battle, but bleeding out in the process. In the top left, you list your priorities for the week, the 3 or 4 most important things you'll do to move the OKRs forward. Not busy work, not everything on your endless to-do list, just the things that absolutely must happen. This box is about intention. And in the bottom left is the heads up, the pipeline of big things coming in the next 4 weeks, so nobody gets blindsided. This simple 4-square grid, reviewed every single Monday, creates a powerful rhythm. It's a cadence of commitment. It ensures the goal isn't just a motivational poster on the wall gathering dust. It's the compass guiding every single week. But that's only half the rhythm. The second part, Raphael explained, is the Friday celebration. Every Friday, the team gathers. No status reports. No problem solving. Just winning. The engineers demo what they built. Sales shares the deals they closed. Customer service talks about a customer they delighted. It's pure progress and celebration. It builds momentum. It reminds everyone they're part of a winning team, even when the goals are brutal and the work is exhausting. This weekly cadence, Monday commitment and Friday celebration, is the engine of the OKR system. It's what transforms goal setting from wishful thinking into actual achievement. Hannah, Jack, and Raphael formed a new executive team. Their first act was a hard one. They fired Eric, the saboteur. Hannah, finally stepping fully into her role as CEO, delivered the news. No negotiation. Clean and decisive. It sent a powerful message to the rest of the team. The era of chaos was over. That Monday, they rolled out the new system. Hannah stood before the team. "Folks," she said, "we're making some changes. First, I'd like everyone to close their laptops." It was a small gesture, but it signaled a massive shift. No more hiding behind screens. They were going to be present. They were going to act like a team. She explained the new format, one company, OKR. And this time, they weren't going to hand it down from the executive throne. They were going to build it together. "We value the things we make together," she said. "This is our company. We succeed or fail as one." The team, for the first time, felt genuine ownership. They debated, they argued, and they landed on a single, powerful OKR for the quarter. The weeks that followed were a transformation. The Monday meetings were sharp and focused. The four-square dashboard kept everyone aligned. When confidence in a key result dropped, they attacked the problem as a team. The Friday win sessions became the highlight of everyone's week. The office, once quiet and tense, was now filled with energy, laughter, and the electric feeling of real progress. People started actually understanding what their colleagues in other departments did all day. A culture of trust and transparency began to grow. Jack, no longer torn in different directions, found his focus. He realized that to build a truly great product, he had to understand the whole business, even the numbers he'd always avoided. He let go of the contract for the graphic designer Anya. Not because her work wasn't beautiful, but because it wasn't a top priority. It wasn't helping them hit their OKRs right now. He was finally making the hard choices that real focus requires. A quarter later, the team gathered to review their results. They'd accomplished every single key result. The room was electric with celebration. But Raphael poured a bit of cold water on the party. "Hey guys," he said, "this isn't necessarily good. Are we sandbagging?" Sandbagging. Setting goals you know you can hit, just to feel good about yourselves. He challenged them to set even harder, more ambitious goals for the next quarter. And they did. They were no longer afraid of failure. They were excited by the challenge of reaching for something extraordinary. The company was thriving. They were no longer dreamers hoping the universe would align in their favor. They had a system. They had focus. They were becoming execution machines. A year later, Hannah sat at her desk, staring at an email. It was done. They'd closed their Series A funding round. They were set for at least another year, maybe two. She looked across the office and saw Jack and Raphael hunched over a monitor, laughing about something. Everything felt easier now. The disagreements were productive, not personal. Each week, they shared their goals. Each week, they supported each other. Each week, the numbers climbed. She thought about saving the news for the Friday win session. It would be fun to have the best news to share. She took a sip of her perfectly brewed Longjing tea. The dream was alive again. And this time, it was built on solid ground. What a journey, right? It's beautifully simple on the surface. But inside that simplicity lives a truly profound set of lessons about what it actually takes to succeed. The story of TB isn't really about tea at all. It's about the universal struggle to turn an idea, any idea, into something real. It's about the constant friction between passion and process, between vision and execution. Christina Wodtke gives us a framework, but she wraps it in a deeply human story because she understands that systems and processes are completely useless without people, and people are wonderfully messy. We're driven by ego, fear, our own personal visions of what's right and wrong. Jack wasn't a villain. He was a creative person terrified of compromising his vision. Hannah wasn't just a cold, numbers-driven CEO. She was carrying the weight of her family's history and a deep fear of failure. Their conflict is the conflict inside every great team that's ever existed. The genius of the OKR system, as presented in Radical Focus, is how it addresses this human element. It's not some rigid, top-down command and control system. It's a tool for creating alignment and fostering real conversation. The first great lesson is the power of a single shared goal. Think about your own life for a second. How often are you trying to juggle 10 things at once? You want to get fit, learn a language, start a side project, read more books, spend more time with family. As Wodtke says, if everything is important, nothing is important. The discipline to choose the one thing that matters most for a season, whether it's a business quarter or a chapter of your life, is an absolute superpower. It brings clarity. It simplifies decisions. It lets you pour all your energy into a single point of attack. The second lesson is the magic of rhythm. A goal set in January is usually forgotten by February, gathering dust in some abandoned notebook. The weekly rhythm of Monday commitments and Friday celebrations is the heartbeat that keeps the goal alive and breathing. The Monday meeting forces intentionality. It asks, are the things I'm planning to do this week actually going to get me closer to my goal? The Friday celebration is equally critical. It builds momentum. It reframes the struggle. Even in a brutal week when you feel like you're spinning your wheels, you can find small wins to celebrate. It protects team morale and creates a culture of positive forward movement. And finally, the most important lesson is the shift from measuring output to measuring outcome. This is genuinely game-changing. So many of us, and so many companies, are trapped in the busy work mindset. We measure success by how many tasks we check off a list, how many features we ship, how many hours we grind. But none of that matters if it doesn't produce a result. An OKR isn't build a new website, it's increase online sales by 20%. The website is just a tactic, a hypothesis. If it doesn't work, the OKR framework gives you the freedom to scrap it and try something else. It liberates you from falling in love with a plan and helps you fall in love with a result instead. So how can you apply this right now, today? Start small. Pick one area of your life or one project you're working on. Don't try to create 5 OKRs for every corner of your existence. Just one. What's the single most important objective you want to achieve in the next 90 days? Write it down. Make it inspiring enough that it excites you. Then define 3 measurable key results. How will you know, without any doubt, that you've succeeded? Make them ambitious enough to be a little scary. Then find your rhythm. On Monday morning, write down the 3 most important things you'll do that week to move those numbers. On Friday afternoon, take 5 minutes to write down your wins. It doesn't have to be a big production. Just acknowledge your progress. Celebrate it. Share it with a friend or mentor. This system is simple, but it's definitely not easy. It requires discipline. It requires honest, sometimes uncomfortable conversations. It requires the courage to focus on one thing when the entire world is screaming at you to do a million things. But as Hannah and Jack discovered, it's the only path that turns a fragile dream into an unstoppable reality. That was a summary of Radical Focus by Christina Wodtke. We've journeyed through the core ideas today, but here's the truth. A summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. You can see the landmarks and understand the general layout, but you can't feel the sun on your skin or taste the local food. The real magic happens when you visit the country yourself. This summary is designed to help you decide if this is a journey worth taking. If the story of Hannah and Jack resonated with you, if the idea of finding clarity and focus in your own work lights something up inside you, then grab a copy of the book. Reading it isn't just learning a system, it's experiencing a story that might genuinely change the way you approach your biggest goals. Also, if you found this summary valuable, I'd be grateful if you'd hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book from the Billionaire's Bookshelf. Let's keep learning and growing together.